Welcome back to my flipped classroom. Today we're going to be talking about causes of the Great Depression. We've explored the Roaring Twenties, but as you know, good things always come to an end. We're going to look at Harding in office to begin with. He had promised a return to normalcy during his campaign, and his return to normalcy meant going back to the pre-progressive era values and ways of doing things. He promoted a laissez-faire style of government, very hands-off, very pro-business, and of course corporate America loved it. He surrounded himself with a group of people known as the Ohio Gang. They're a bunch of his poker buddies that were very greedy. He utilized the spoils system. Think back, all the way back to Andrew Jackson and the spoils system. So the Pendleton Civil Service Act is not in play during Harding's term of office. His buddies get the key positions, and they take advantage of it. There are people looking to get rich off the government, and it's going to bite them. The biggest scandal during Harding's term of office is the Teapot Dome scandal. The Secretary of Interior, Albert B. Fall, leased federal oil reserves at Elk Hill, California, and Teapot Dome to private companies in return for bribes. Obviously illegal. The oil was for naval use. Fall goes to jail, which is appropriate, but it's the first cabinet member to go to jail in U.S. history. Not exactly something you want remembered during your term in office. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, Harding dies in office before the scandal can really touch him. Harding's successor is Calvin Coolidge, whose nickname was Silent Cal because he was a very quiet man. He placed his trust in business as well and took a very laissez-faire approach. Again, corporate America loves him. He had very honest people working for him. Integrity was everything in his administration. The economy is booming, but it's not going to be doing it for very long. But right now, the tide is high. Money is rolling, and people are spending it like crazy. After Calvin Coolidge comes Herbert Hoover. If you'll remember, Herbert Hoover held an important office during World War I and was a very popular man during this time. He was elected in 1928. The economy's still booming, and he's very much a laissez-faire guy as well. Things are looking good, but there are signs. People just don't want to recognize them for what they are. Some early signs of the Great Depression. The first was overproduction. There were too many goods and not enough consumers. That's basic supply and demand. Farmers have huge debt and can't sell their crops, so they're not making money and they're not paying off their debt. That's just one example of many. But when you make too much stuff, you create a glut in the market. And this is an early sign of what's getting ready to happen. Another problem is distribution of wealth. There is a tremendous gap between the rich and the poor. There is a non-existent middle class, which leads to even fewer consumers for the overflowing products in the market. The middle class barely exists. You have the super wealthy and the barely getting by. Some other causes: the installment plan. For the first time, people are buying items with small down payments and then making monthly payments. And they were doing this primarily for major purchases, things like cars, washing machines, and refrigerators. There, this used to not exist. It was considered a more or less a Christian ethic to save up the money until you could buy it outright. Well, the installment plan made that go away. This idea of buying on margin in the stock market, you would buy stock on credit. This idea of credit. You make a small down payment and monthly payments, just like installment buying, but you're doing it with stock. The problem is the value of the stocks go up and down. So the amount that you owed yo-yoed. Very risky. Speculation. People would buy stock using credit that we just talked about, hoping that prices would rise and they would be able to sell and make a big profit. But if the prices didn't rise, they would lose everything. It is extremely risky. And this idea of easy credit. Everybody qualifies. A few years ago, we had the same problem. Buying on credit is a new idea. People used to fear debt, but in the 1920s, they embraced debt. It was a sign of, who had the most stuff wins. And as long as you were making monthly payments, everybody felt that they were doing fine. But, this is not going to last forever. Everybody's going to reach their breaking point, and it's going to be ugly. All good things come to a close, and the boom will become a bust. In September of 1929, stock prices are falling, and so lots of people are selling their stocks. Well, that's fine. When prices start to fall, if you want to get out of the market, that's what you do. You sell your stock. But when lots and lots of people do it at the same time, you create a panic, and prices will continue to plummet. Black Tuesday, October 29th, 1929, very famous day in American history, because that's the day that is recognized as having sparked the Great Depression. So many people rushed to sell their stocks. It's called the Great Crash. People lose their fortunes in a matter of hours. The wealthiest of the wealthy became the poorest of the poor in an afternoon. All this buying on credit, speculation, all of it, buying on margin, all came due in an afternoon. And when you buy on credit, you don't necessarily have the money available to make the margin call. And so when you don't, you lose your collateral, which is often your house, your car, or you go bankrupt. And that's what happened to all these people. The Great Depression lasted from 1929 to 1941. The United States economy was in ruins. Businesses closed all over the country. Extremely high unemployment, at one point reaching almost 25%. So there's even fewer goods being bought with such high unemployment, so that's not helping. The cycle is going in a vicious circle downhill instead of going uphill. Bank closings are happening all over the place. People are running to the banks to withdraw their savings, but because banks run out of money on hand, they're not required to keep a certain amount of money on hand. They physically run out of money to give to their customers, and those people lose their money because the banks literally close. They fail. And there's no insurance like we have now to protect people's savings accounts and checking accounts. So, one thing the government tries to do to help is institute the Hawley-Smoot tariff. Hoover tries to help by protecting American businesses from foreign competition. Great idea, terrible execution. It backfires in the worst possible way. The Hawley-Smoot tariff raised taxes on foreign imports. Hopefully you remember a tariff is a tax on imports to help keep domestic products competitive on the market. Well, that's all well and good, except when American businesses go overseas, in retaliation, other countries impose taxes on the American businesses, and it hurts the U.S. terribly. So now the U.S. cannot sell their products in America to consumers who don't have jobs, nor other countries, because they have to pay these high import taxes. So what we'll be looking at next in our next installment is life during the Great Depression. Thanks so much. See you later.